and welcome to Coffee Break Blogging, where you'll learn to grow and monetize your blog in short, tactical installments you can use right away. Now here's the next episode in our series. Hello and welcome back to another installment of Coffee Break Blogging, where this isn't just another podcast, it's actually a full course on building an online business based around blogging from scratch. My name again is David Risley, and if you want to catch up with us from the beginning, head on over to coffeebreakblogging.com to view the full archives. Okay, so today what we're actually going to do is we're going to continue on our topic of webinars, and we're specifically going to go over a broad outline with some tips of the 60-minute webinar plan. Now, this is actually a download that I've been talking to you about for the last 2 or 3 episodes of the show because we've been talking about webinars. So you can go and grab this PDF image at blogmarketingacademy.com/webinar plan. Once again, that's blogmarketingacademy.com/webinar plan. It's completely free. You just enter your email and we'll send it to that email address. So what we're going to do right now in this show is we're actually going to walk through that exact graphic, okay? And make a few commentaries along the way. So this is a 60-minute webinar formula designed to make sales. And I created this graphic actually a few years ago for some training that I had done. And I'm kind of bringing it forward here because really the formula hasn't really changed. Now, I want to be upfront with you. When we use the word formula, I don't want you to think that everything is about filling in templates and that you need to hold to these timelines exactly, because that's not the case. It's your webinar, okay? But you will find that this general setup is what a lot of people do. Also, about this whole 60-minute thing, realize this is a general 60-minute plan, but if your webinar is not exactly 60 minutes, that is fine. Some people go longer. I've done and attended many 90-minute webinars. Sometimes it goes longer than that, depending on Q&A. I've seen some that are shorter. I've done some that are shorter. So I want you to feel free to do what comes naturally to you. At the end of the day, this is your webinar, and I don't want you to think that because somebody puts the word formula on it here, as I have, that this is the only way to do it and that you have to stay in between the lines, okay? So just want to make that up front to you. All right, so let's get going here. The 60-minute webinar plan is generally going to be broken down into 3 components. It's an introduction component, which is roughly 10 minutes, the content, as they call it, which would be roughly 40 minutes, and then we go into the close, which would be roughly 10 minutes. So 10, 40, 10 would add up to about 60. Again, these time frames are very, very loose, okay? So generally speaking with the introduction is you're going to be spending time introducing yourself, talking about the topic, not the topic itself, but introducing the topic. So this is all about setup and getting them integrated into the webinar. And then you move into the content portion of it, and this is where you actually deliver on the promise that you set forth and you promise to them. So looking at the headline and the bullet points that people saw when they signed up for your webinar, now's the time that you deliver that, okay? And then after that, you go into the close. Now, this is the portion typically where you are going to make an offer of some kind. Now, this is the portion that a lot of people get a little nervous about, and it can get a little weird making that transition from content to close. These are things that you will get better at with practice, okay? That you will get better at it with practice. So I don't want you to think that it's just this huge sudden mind shift and like you're going good on the content, and then it comes to close and all of a sudden you get really passive and really quiet. Don't do that. If the content is good, they will be ready for the next step. And not only that, you should not make your content and your offer be a complete mismatch, obviously. So if you're going to be presenting on some topic, and then it's like, okay, if you want to take this to the next level, here is how to go about doing that. It will be a natural extension of the content. And so therefore, you shouldn't have to make this big sea shift in not only your tone and attitude and everything, just because you're now presenting to them something that they can buy. All right. All right, so let's go back to the introduction. The point is that you want to introduce them to you, or to the person that you're interviewing. So the idea there would be if you are having a guest present on the webinar, but it's your audience, then what you're going to do is you are going to introduce your guest because you're the one who is known to your audience. So the last thing that you would want to do is have a guest come on and present to your audience with no setup. Okay, so you would introduce your audience. You're kind of lending your credibility to them, so to speak. You tell your audience why you've invited them to present, kind of set them up, and then you let them get on with it. Okay, so it's just a basic introduction. Now, if it's you delivering to your own audience, then it would be you introducing yourself. Now, you want to take into account here who your target is. If these are people who are already pretty familiar with you, then there's no reason to go into here's my background and all this stuff. Usually when you're on webinars that do that, it's because that webinar is being presented to people who are not already familiar with the speaker. If I'm running a webinar as a lead magnet or I'm running an ad out on Facebook to bring people into my webinar, then I will spend a few minutes talking about my background and kind of introducing myself to them because these are people who might not know me very well yet. Okay, so always take into account your target market there. Now, the other thing about introducing yourself is that you don't want to get too long-winded about it. You don't want to just tell your general biography. You only want to bring in the parts that are relevant to why people are coming to you now, okay? What is the background of you relevant to the topic? And don't bring up stuff that's not related. And you can also turn this into a storyline if your past actually fits it. So, you see a lot of people who say, I was having difficulty in X, whatever your topic might be, and then I found this, and then now I got this whole nother system for how I've accomplished this, and today that's what we're going to be talking about. And you kind of build that into your own introduction and your own background, and it kind of allows your attendees to get some empathy and some trust of you and why they should be listening to you in this topic. Okay? Now, that easily is going to move into introducing them into the topic itself. Now, obviously, they already know what you're going to be talking about because they saw the headline and the registration and all that. But now's the time where you're going to reiterate what that is. You're going to make some promises to them as to what they can expect on this webinar. You can maybe set up some teasers on things to look for in that webinar, maybe a bonus that they can get at the end if they stay all the way, things like that. Okay. Now, as a general tone, you want to make sure that you sound fairly energetic. Don't sound like you're dead and ready to go to sleep. That's not going to work very well. Using a little bit of humor can kind of loosen people up. It works really, really well. Now, obviously, don't inject it if you're not naturally that way. Just at the end of the day, I think the best advice here is to simply be natural. Talk to the people who are on your webinar as if they were sitting across from a table, okay? Just don't make it out to be more than it really is, all right? All right, a big thing here, too, is that you can overcome the objections of this being a sales webinar, okay? Because depending on the market, you're going to have some people coming into this webinar and they're going to be like, hey, I'm here for the topic because you promised me X, X, and X or whatever, but I know you're going to pitch me at the end, all right? And so there's a little bit of that shields up mentality. But what you can actually do is you can totally deflate that by just letting them know, yeah, I am going to present to you an offer at the end. It's totally up to you, absolutely no pressure at all. It will be a natural way to move forward on the topic that we're talking about today, but I promise you that you are going to get a lot of value out of this webinar, whether you decide to ultimately buy or not. So sit back and let's get some value out of this webinar. Something like that. I just made that up off the fly, but I think it's a good idea to directly address the fact that you're going to make an offer on that webinar and kind of deflate that little shields up mentality that some people might have. Now, on the graphic is this little bubble that says get them into a yes sequence. Now, all that basically means is that you are setting a little bit of momentum up with them answering questions in the affirmative by saying yes. And you could do that by asking them what are often rhetorical questions, questions where you pretty much know the answer is going to be yes. Okay. So for off the top of my head, if I were doing the blog monetization webinar and I asked people on the webinar, would you like to make $10,000 a month with your blog? I don't know, something off the top of my head. Obviously everybody there is going to probably say yeah to that, right? It's that type of thing. It's kind of like you're getting them interested in your topic, you're getting them a little bit jazzed up, but you're also doing it by asking them questions that they're going to say yes to. Okay, so that's what the yes sequence is. And what it does is it builds up some momentum to get them to say yes toward the end of the webinar as well with your offer. Okay, if people are making the decisions themselves rather than you convincing them why they need to, it's a very different sales experience. So that's why the yes sequence is powerful, because you're getting them to make these small micro commitments in their head and even possibly verbally by saying, yes, I do want that. Yes, I do want that. Yes, that is true. And it's like they're agreeing to it. They're owning their position on that topic. And then that makes it a lot simpler when it gets to the point where obviously they want to take the next step because they just said that they wanted to do something about that. It's just a matter of staying consistent with what they've already said and agreed to. Okay. All right, so let's move into the content portion on our 60-minute webinar formula. Now, I'm not going to dive too deep into this one because I talked about this in a lot more detail in the last episode 154 of Coffee Break Blogging. So you can back up one episode if you haven't listened to that, and we go more into planning out the content portion of the webinar. But generally speaking, in our template, this is going to be roughly 40 minutes. Once again, give or take here, man. But at the same time, you want to err on the side of good content here. I don't want anybody here to think that content is some formality you got to get through so you can get forward to pitching them. That's not the attitude that one should have if you're going to do a successful webinar, and people can see right through it. People have good BS detectors, okay? So deliver some good solid stuff here. You want to show them the meat. You want to give them some stuff that they can really walk out of this webinar with some real value, whether they buy from you or not. Okay. Now you want to have some major points that you're going to deliver to them. The graphic here says 3 to 6 major points, each one with a slide. Now I would actually modify this a little bit, because as I said in episode 154 about planning out the content of your webinar, you should have a lot of slides, okay? You don't want to have it so that you're sitting on one slide for all that long. So don't do one of these bullet point style slides where you're sitting on the same one for 5 minutes or something. Okay, I've done that many times. It's easy to lose people. I still do it primarily more on like training webinars where I'm really not worried as much about making an offer or anything like that. It's just info. But if I'm really thinking about engagement, getting people to the end, presenting an offer at the end of it, I'm a little bit more conscious of not having those big long-winded bullet point slides. Okay, so you want to. A few little notes that I have here on the formula graphic. One is that you can start out by telling them to get out a pen and paper and take some notes. Now, the idea there is to get them to honor their commitment for why they signed up for the webinar to begin with. What you're really trying to do is get them to pay attention to you and not be distracted by their email or Facebook or something like that. But you're doing it by not just saying, hey, shut off Facebook. I mean, you can do that, but it's also about, again, getting them to take some ownership of their own decision. They decided to be on your webinar. They came there for a reason. They wanted something that you promised to them. And now you're basically inviting them to honor their own commitment, their own decision for showing up, and pay attention. And another way that you can do that is to say, take out a pen and paper, because we're going to have a few very important points that I really want to make sure that you understand. And the best way, it's been proven, that is to write it down. The actual act of writing it down on a piece of paper helps you understand and remember that material and actually get more use out of it later. So I would highly encourage you to get out a pen and paper, and when I tell you to write something down, do that, and I do so for a reason. Something like that. But it not only is going to help the material impact them a little bit more, which is always good, but it's going to help them remain a lot more engaged with your webinar. Okay? The other point that I have here on the 60-minute webinar formula is that if you can tie in testimonials with each major section of your content, then this works really well for setting up the eventual offer. So let's say that your content was going to be broken down into 5 main points, like 5 main things that you were going to discuss and show them how to do. If you could end off each of those things with a real testimonial from people that you've served on how you helped them do exactly that, that's great lead up. Now, you're not going into pitch mode, here when you're presenting these testimonials. You're just it's like a natural thing to show that other people have accomplished what you just showed people how to do in the webinar. And you're showing that with a testimonial that, of course, says something good about you or whatever it is that you're going to eventually be offering on that webinar. So that's just a little tactic there, very commonly done, but it helps a lot. Okay. All right. From there, let's move into the close. Now, I have this as a 10-minute increment. It's give and take. But what I don't want you to do is think that I'm going to spend, 20, 30 minutes on content, then I'm going to just spend the whole darn thing pitching at them. Crummy attitude, don't do that. Okay, so you can make this close as short as you want, as long as you can get the point across, or longer if you feel that it's necessary. Now, this close does not really include the Q&A portion of it, but we will talk about that here in a little bit. Okay, so let's make a few points here about what you're doing during this offer presentation close portion of the webinar. First thing you're going to do is you want to show the product. You want to outline the offer that you're offering to them on this webinar. It's good that while you do that you show the actual product. So if you can get a physical product image made of it, then that's great. Something that shows real world tangible value to the offer. So with an info product, very commonly what would be done is you'd go out and you'd get an image of a boxed course or a set of DVDs or something. Even if that's not the format that you sell it in, it's just nice to have those types of images because it increases perceived value of your course. I mean, it's just the way that it is, okay? Now, if you're doing a service or something like that, another way that you can do this is to give the product its own logo, brand it as its own thing, because that increases perceived value and makes it its own brandable thing. So do you have a logo that's separate from your main company logo or blog logo? Have its own brandable logo for your product, and that could be a way to do this as well, okay? Another thing on the graphic here is it says show the list of all products they will get, 1 slide per item. The reason it's there is because typically in order to increase the value of your offer, you want to present to them several different things that they're going to get. And in fact, one of the bubbles here on the 60-minute webinar formula is that you can shoot for a 10x pricing factor. So the idea there would be that the value that they're going to get is roughly worth 10 times more than you're asking them to pay. Okay, so let's say that you were going to charge $100 for this offer on the webinar. How can you give them $1,000 worth of value? And how can you demonstrate that $1,000 worth of value? Okay, now, so typically your offer is going to be made up of the core thing plus some bonuses and things like that. And it's kind of like this bundle thing that you're presenting to them. So for each one of those components of your offer, have a slide that describes it. Okay, and you could even put the price that is worth. Now, don't be one of these weird people who, when they say this product is worth X, that you're just kind of pulling out some big mega number out of your butt. I've seen a lot of people do that. Make the price realistic. Make it, even better, make it a price that you've actually charged people for it in the past. I've seen that with bonus offers. Sometimes the bonus offer will be a product that maybe you sold it in the past, but now it's not technically on the market anymore, but now you're using it as a bonus. Well, you can say it was legitimately worth whatever it is that you were charging for it previously, because that's what it was being sold for. But don't be one of these people who, you give them a list of resources and, 3 or 4 page PDF, and you say value $497. It's not. It's a freaking PDF file. So don't pull stuff out of your butt like that. I've seen people do that, and then they end up with this real world value of $30,000. You can have it all today for $97. It's not believable. Okay, it's not believable. Don't do stuff like that. Okay, show them the real price. At the end, once you've presented everything and you've built up this value, you then show them what they can buy it for today. Present to them the offer. And if it's an offer that's exclusive to the webinar, special pricing, make damn sure to tell them that, because that gives them that incentive that it's almost like a little thank you for being on the webinar, okay? Now, I highly encourage you, when you present the offer, to offer fast action bonuses. Okay, so basically what this is you need to give people that incentive to take action and not sit around and think about it. And so fast action bonuses are things that people are going to get if they act now. Okay, the thing about people, this is human nature. A lot of times when it comes to making a decision, a lot of people simply are a little bit afraid to do so, especially when it involves money. And so what you need to do is you need to get them to get off the fence. Now, even if they decide ultimately I'm not going to buy, that's fine. It's better for them to have made a decision than to sit around stuck on it. And so that's really what you're doing with these fast action bonuses. Now, it certainly helps that that sense of urgency is going to help more people decide in the affirmative to buy. If you present a really good offer and you say, here's why you need to buy it right now instead of waiting, you're going to get higher conversion rates. It works every single time. Okay. Now, another thing, a bubble I've got here on the formula is to get the product for free if they accomplish something with it. Now, this is a nice little tactic where you can give people the option to get your offer for free if they accomplish certain things with it. So basically the idea here is that they're going to buy it. You're asking them to buy it right now. And then you're inviting them to get certain results. And your product hopefully is set up to enable that to happen. So what you're doing is you're incentivizing them to actually be one of your best case studies, one of your best testimonials. Okay? But you're inviting them to, if they hit that mark, if they accomplish that, you will actually refund to them the cost of their purchase, essentially making it free. So what you're getting out of that is you're going to have higher conversions because you're going to have more people who buy, because there's now this promise that maybe they can get it for free if they actually execute. That's the important part. But the good thing is even if you get some stellar students who take advantage of that and you ultimately do refund them their money, you just got one hell of a great case study and testimonial about the effectiveness of your offer, which is, of course, you could build into that webinar and use it to make more sales later. So it does help. So this is the idea of get the product for free. Let's accomplish certain benchmarks and I will refund the cost of that purchase to you. And it's a way of reducing risk and getting people to make that sale now. Okay. The other thing is at the end of the webinar, there's a good chance, there's a couple things here. One is that you're going to do a Q&A, most likely, and then then you're going to end the webinar. Now, you need to pay some attention as to what is on screen when you're doing that. What I like to recommend is that during the Q&A that you have your call to action slide on the webinar. So you're maybe a few bullet points, the product image itself, and of course the link, the place where they need to go to buy it. And that slide stays on the screen while you're doing your Q&A. Okay. Now, I might have mentioned this in a previous episode. I don't remember. But when it comes to Q&A, you don't want to be reliant on actual live questions. You want to have some questions that you predetermined. That way, when you go to Q&A, you don't look like a weirdo if you don't have actual questions sitting there waiting for you. You don't want to go to dead air, okay? So what I would highly recommend is that you have questions ready. And these questions could be ones that you've gotten from people in the past that you know are very common questions. It could be questions that, quite frankly, you wrote because they handle common sales objections, common confusions about your offer. And you have that list of questions at the ready so that when you go into the Q&A portion of your webinar, you've got somewhere to go with it, and then you would intermix it with whatever might happen live on that webinar. But the entire time, you have your call to action slide up there on screen so that people never lose sight of where you want them to go. Another thing that I've seen people do at this stage, especially if they have fax action bonuses, is that you can actually put a timer right on the darn screen. Okay, so that let's say that you have you give them 30 minutes to act if they get certain bonuses if they do it in the first 30 minutes or something like that. You can actually get a 30-minute timer and put it on screen. Now, the technicals of that I'm not going to get into here, but I've seen downloadable timers, basically an image or basically a movie file, and you can literally embed that right into your slides. And so you could have a timer right there in your slide deck so that it's really good visible scarcity, okay? There's also a service that I use called Deadline Funnel. That's deadlinefunnel.com, which allows you to have real deadlines. And so you can put a timer deadline right on the offer page that is set for 30 minutes. And it's started by when they first visit that page, and it will enforce your deadline. So that's another great way to do this. And it would be totally evergreen, which means you can replay this webinar over and over again, and everybody would still have that 30-minute deadline. And then after the 30-minute, you would automatically move them to another version of the same offer that doesn't have those fast action bonuses available. Okay? So that's how that would work. Now, one other thing is that after the actual end of the webinar, so this would be all the Q&A is over, everything is done, you're done talking. What do you do? Well, most people, and honestly, most of the time for me too, will simply just end the webinar. It's like, okay, thanks for coming, see ya. What you might want to try doing, because you might have some people who were sitting there thinking about it, okay? Now, most people are going to leave. Most people are going to leave when you leave, but you might have some who for some reason don't. And so what I've seen some people do is they will actually go silent, mute the mic, and actually leave the webinar technically running for another 15, 20, 30 minutes with the call to action slide sitting there. Okay? So it's kind of just running. There's just nothing happening. Okay? But those people that were still stragglers there, it's sitting there. Okay, so that's kind of the idea that you can do that. Now, a few notes about the offer. Obviously, make it an irresistible offer. Make it something that speaks so strongly to what they're trying to accomplish, and the price is so compelling that they just have a hard time declining. That's really where you want them to go with that, okay? You want to make it so that they almost feel like they're taking advantage of you when they buy it. That's kind of how you want this to be. All right. If you can accomplish that, you're going to make a lot of sales in your webinar. Okay. Now, when it comes to breaking the product up into different, so you've got your core offer and you got the various bonuses and various components of your offer. Each one of those components should have its own price point. We mentioned that a little bit earlier. So those could be their own products. Maybe you're taking several of your products and you're kind of bundling them together into one big mega product. Well, assign the price to each of those components and then lay it out. And then when you present to them the offer they're going to pay, it's going to obviously be less than that. Again, it's making it an irresistible offer. Okay. Focus on the benefits, not the features. That's pretty classic sales 101 right there. Use presupposition. Now, there's a little bubble here that talks about presupposition. Basically, what this is that when you're talking about your offer, you're talking as if you're assuming that they're going to do it. Okay? So it's not a matter if you take advantage of this offer today, Instead, it's more like when you take advantage of this offer today. Okay, it's a verbal thing. It's very subdued, but basically, you are presupposing that they're going to do this, and it makes so much sense for them to take this offer that you don't even know, you're not even entertaining the possibility that they're not going to do it. Okay. Obviously, as you present the offer, use social proof, testimonials where you can. Now, testimonials have evolved. We have actual real testimonials that people will submit it to you. If you can put case studies in there that show real world results, that's great. Don't always shoot for the big mega results. You want to go for results that are actually pretty typical. But you can also get people who are just saying cool things about you or your offer on social media, and you can just screenshot them. Facebook posts, Twitter, stuff like that. And then you can screenshot those things and put them into the slide, because that's all valid forms of social proof. Okay. All right, so that pretty much wraps up some of our main points from the 60-minute webinar formula. All right, once again, everything that we just talked about, you can actually download by going over to blogmarketingacademy.com/webinar plan. And then as you have that in front of you, printed out or on your screen, you can actually, if you want to, listen to this podcast again, and you might even get some more value and some more ideas from that. Okay, so with that, we're going a little long here. So we've been going for about a half an hour now. And so thanks so much for listening. If you're getting value out of these episodes, I'd highly appreciate it if you run on over into iTunes and tell people that you are getting some value out of this podcast. I enjoy doing it, and I hope you enjoy listening to it as much as I enjoy actually talking to you. So head on over to blogmarketingacademy.com/iTunes and let people know what you think of Coffee Break Blogging. Okay. I will see you next time. We'll be talking more about how to get more people to actually attend your webinar in the first place. So see you on the next episode of Coffee Break Blogging. Talk soon. Thanks for listening to this episode of Coffee Break Blogging. If you like what you heard here today, we have something awesome we'd love to send you. It's called the Blog Conversion Guide, and it has 9 tweaks you can make to your blog in order to increase your conversion rate to get more opt-ins and sales. As one of our listeners, we'd love to give you access to this guide absolutely free. You can get your copy right now by going to coffeebreakblogging.com. Again, go to coffeebreakblogging.com to get your copy, and we'll see you next time.